Hello, I'm Daryl Wu, Board Vice President of My Sister's House.
And I'm Angela Lai, Board Secretary of My Sister's House. The purpose of this show is to help individuals in our community recognize aspects of healthy and unhealthy relationships, as well as raise the awareness of domestic violence in our community.
We are part of My Sister's House, a Sacramento-based nonprofit organization focused on serving the needs of Asian and Pacific Islander women and children impacted by domestic violence. My Sister's House provides a culturally appropriate and responsive safe haven and community services. In a continuing effort to spread the word about domestic violence prevention, My Sister's House brings you this special program.
You are watching Healthy Relationships, brought to you by the Office of Violence Against Women.
Today on Healthy Relationships, we will describe signs of financial abuse in unhealthy relationships.
Think about your daughter, sister, cousin, niece, or granddaughter. How can you make sure that they are not victims of financial abuse? And what should you do if you find yourself or a loved one in an unhealthy relationship?
We know this is a tough subject to talk about, and it's especially tough in our Asian and Pacific Islander communities because of the customs in our cultures.
It is particularly tough for women in our Asian and Pacific Islander communities. In this episode, a young woman named Priya talks about her struggles as a victim and how she suffered financial control by her husband. Priya shares her story.
I met my husband in grad school. I came from India in fall of 2000 to pursue my master's in electrical engineering, and he was already graduating from the university that I joined. That's where I met him. I think both our families are fairly progressive with the whole love marriage idea, so they didn't have a problem. His parents had met me before I came to the US, so they really liked me, and our families knew each other when we were friends, so they didn't have a problem when we spoke about our intent to get married. Actually, I graduated in 2003 and I came to stay with my fiance at that time. This was in 2003, and that's when I first started noticing he had anger issues. But it just seemed like an isolated issue, and we had sporadic incidents here and there when he would fling things across the room or punch a hole in the drywall, and that started to raise concerns in me. I was convinced by his parents that that was an isolated episode and that it wouldn't recur, and he didn't really have any temper issues. So, we're all, I think, eternal optimists at heart. You want to believe that there's hope for betterment and scope for improvement, and I didn't want to bail out at the first sign of challenge. I wanted to see if this would, we were in love for several years before we decided to get engaged anyway, so I decided to go ahead with the marriage. We got married in 2004, and again the issues were predominantly just anger, control, and I started seeing issues with control. I am very sociable. I'm the extrovert amongst us, and he is the introvert in the family. He was working at that time. I was at home, so I had a lot of friends, had a pretty good social network and circle. And he started controlling and isolating me from my friends. There was isolation from family, and slow control of movement, control of communication. Like, he would monitor the odometer literally in the car and say, if you put in another mile, then you're going to have to face dire consequences. He would take away my cell phone, and he confiscated my phone several times from me to make sure that I didn't make any calls. He would constantly monitor the call history or telephone bills to make sure that I wasn't calling anyone that he wasn't comfortable with. So it started off that way, and before I knew it, spiraled into several incidents. My husband was extremely penny pinching. He actually came from a very affluent family back in India, and but for some reason he had to keep control of every single penny that was brought into the house. And when we started, I was actually making more money than he was, which he was extremely uncomfortable with. And immediately he wanted us to start a joint account. And I had no problems with it initially, as long as he let me take care of my life and my family to the extent that I wanted to. But slowly I started realizing that I would spend $2 on a Baskin Robbins milkshake and all hell would break loose at home. And he'd be like, oh, I was saving this for our daughter's future. She's not going to be able to go to MIT or Harvard now. And no more eating outside for the next 2 months, and just ridiculous demands. After I quit my original job where I was making more money than him, I took up a job at the same company, and we were both working for the same company. It meant we had to drive together to work and back from work, and it was very difficult. We would carry over issues from home and bicker about it the entire drive, and we would go back to our cubicles, and he'd either instant message me continuing the fight or send me emails, constant emails. If not, he would just show up at my cubicle and just say, oh, if you're free, I'd like to discuss this and find closure. The whole concept of closure just never existed. So at some point in time, I decided to split the joint account and put my earnings and savings in a separate account, and he absolutely hated the idea. So he decided to split everything. He wouldn't take care of our daughter's childcare expenses. If I remember correctly, the original, the house was originally on both our names. We both had, both our names was on the title. But as soon as I split the joint account, he wanted to refinance, which was a bad idea because financially it wasn't a very good interest rate that we were getting. He insisted on refinancing anyway, and he wanted me to put in the down payment for the refinancing because I had separated the account. So after I put in the 10 grand, he made sure that only his name appeared on the title. Any property and asset we accrued, all CDs, money market accounts, everything was just on his sole name. And I remember this one time when we went to the bank manager recommended that my name be included as a beneficiary, but he wasn't happy with the idea. In hindsight, I think I wanted to leave this marriage and relationship long time before I actually had the courage to do. But this whole thing in India, it's not a marriage between a man and a woman, it's a marriage between the two families. The last straw that broke the camel's back was when he actually strangled me by an open fire when I was holding my daughter in my arms and threatened to kill us. He said, oh, go to bed tonight, anything can happen to you. So my first instincts were to call a cop when I had telltale bruises and signs all over my body. Instead, I decided to call his parents because that's what we do. You tap into the right channels, you get the elders in the family involved. Once again, because it's a union of the families. So I just called them and I requested that they intervene. They came over and in their presence he admitted to the abuse. But when I went back home, I realized the whole concept of DV is almost accepted in our culture. All his mother had to say was, oh, I know he strangled you, but he only held you tight for a minute. You could still breathe. That's what I hear from my son. And his father told me that he was an even bigger rogue in his days, in his younger days, and that I was making a big mountain of a molehill. There is this saying in where I come from in India, which goes, Kallanalam Kanavan Pulanalam Purushan, meaning whether it is a small pebble or a blade of grass, a husband needs to be put on a pedestal and worshipped. And also they, as girls, I think we have a very low sense of self-entitlement and a very high sense of loyalty in India, so it's very difficult to sever your ties, no matter how compelling the reasons are. When I decided to leave, I came to know about this DV organization called My Sister's House in Sacramento, which specially caters to Asian and Pacific Islanders. But I decided to go. I called the crisis line, got an appointment with one of the counselors, and basically got a wealth of information. That was very helpful. I didn't take up on any of the advice that I got, which was very foolish of me. because I was first asked to go do everything formally, file a police report, request a full restraining order, because there was this whole safety issue. I'm truly regretting that I didn't follow my counselor's advice, but my sister's house was really a blessing in disguise. I later found out that there are other organizations and resources, but at MSH, I really felt like I was a part of the family. I had a very high degree of shame with what I did, even though I knew that I was doing it for the right reasons. At my sister's house, all the volunteers and all the employees treated me like a part of the family. Didn't feel judged for a single minute that I was there. I felt like they accepted me and welcomed me with whatever package that I brought in. So it's a good place to go. I would recommend anyone in this community thinking about leaving to at least go and see what their options are. Check with my sister's house, have a session or two with the counselors there, and take their words seriously, because it is going to get tough once you decide to come out. In my own words, what I would say to other people who might be in similar shoes that I found myself in, I would first say there is a clear delineation between what is acceptable and what is not. And I would say trust your instincts. I would say believe in yourself. And I would say, I think this country has made me realize that it's not enough if you're a victim. You have to be a well-documented victim. You have to be your own investigator, you have to be your own advocate. So I would basically say muster every ounce of courage and strength you have, especially if you have children to take care of, and do what is right for them. Because no matter how hard you try, you would be setting a bad role model if you sustain an abusive relationship and continue living the same way. இங்க இருக்கிற யாருக்காவது ஜஸ்ட் வெளியில வந்தா என்ன நடக்கும் என்ன நடக்கலாம் குழந்தைகளுக்கு என்ன ஆகும்னு தெரியணும்னா ப்ளீஸ் மை சிஸ்டர்ஸ் ஹவுஸ் கூப்பிட்டு யார்கிட்டயாவது பேசி நம்ம ஊர்க்காராலும் இருக்காங்க வெளியாலும் இருக்காங்க யார்கிட்டயாவது பேசி இங்க அடுத்தது என்ன ஸ்டெப்ஸ் பண்ணலாம் இல்ல யாரை போய் அப்ரோச் பண்ணணும் எந்த ஆர்கனைசேஷனை போய் டேப் பண்ணணும் எப்படி பேப்பர்ஸ் ஃபைல் பண்ணணும் எல்லா விதமான ஹெல்ப்பும் அவங்க ப்ரொவைட் பண்றாங்க. Please contact my sister's house and avangaloda help and advice edukonga. It is there for you to use, but you'll have to reach out.
When we come back, we'll seek the advice from a health professional with years of experience working with survivors and victims of domestic violence.
Dr. Maura Sharma, a psychologist who is an expert on domestic violence, will share with us the signs of an unhealthy relationship and some of the reasons why it is difficult for women to leave an abusive situation.
She had mentioned that culturally it's not just a marriage between two people. In a lot of South Asian cultures, it's actually a marriage between two families.
When healthy relationships continues. 多謝收睇今日嘅健康家庭關係節目。希望今日嘅節目會鼓勵大家探討你哋嘅家庭關係。請記住，如果你或者你關心嘅人受到經濟虐待或者其他家庭暴力問題，請打我哋嘅24小時多語言熱線電話916-428-3271。
Welcome back to Healthy Relationships. We just heard from our special guest Priya, who was brave enough to recognize the signs of an unhealthy relationship with her husband.
Well, Priya says her husband was financially abusive. Many of you watching may share the same experience or know someone in the same situation and would like to do something today about your relationship.
I sat down with Dr. Maura Sharma, a psychologist who is an expert in domestic violence. She currently works for Kaiser Permanente at the Outpatient Psychiatry Department in South Sacramento. Dr. Sharma, can you tell us of the forms of financial abuse that so many women face?
There are a lot of different forms of financial abuse, and really financial abuse is anything that interferes with a woman's access to financial stability, security, ability to earn money. So if there's limited information about what the household finances are, that's a form of financial abuse if one partner's withholding that from the other partner. Limiting a person's ability to get money. Priya had talked about at one point her husband took away the checkbooks, the joint checkbooks, the ATM cards, the debit cards, and so forth. Also, the abuser sometimes insists that the victim has to show him all the receipts and be accountable to the smallest amount. She talked about a $2 expense that he did not accept. She also talked about him monitoring the odometer on her car to get a sense of the amount of expense that went with her travel. Limiting access to work, creating difficulty in terms of if a woman wants to get a better job or change aspects of her job, and then that other person making it difficult. She talked about how her husband would come and instant message her and email her and then come to her cubicle to insist to talk about something to get closure, which made it difficult for her to do that important project she was working on. Sometimes abusers also put all bills in the names of their victim, and then they don't help with the pay, which ruins her credit. Sometimes the opposite can occur, which is what Priya had talked about, is that everything was put in his name, the deeds to the house, a lot of the utilities and bills, and of course that helps establish his credit, but does nothing for her credit. Sometimes when abusers and victims are still living together, the abusers don't help to pay for any of the things that help support their child, whether it's clothing, material resources, daycare. And sometimes once separation has occurred, maybe they hide their wages in making arrangements for child support so that they will only have to pay a certain amount that's less than based on their full wages. So those are some of the forms of financial abuse.
What are some of the economic factors which make it difficult for victims to leave?
So again, with marriage comes access to more resources. With access to more resources, people can get a better home. They can have a better pool of money that helps with transportation, day-to-day expenses, daycare. It also helps provide a sense of economic stability that will help secure development for their children as their children pursue education. Priya had talked a lot about how her husband was monitoring the expenses, how he challenged her about a $2 expense on ice cream, and how because she had made that purchase that she was jeopardizing the financial stability of the family and their ability of their child to go to an Ivy League school. So you can see how some of these small details are blown out of proportion, but really used to economically abuse and exert financial control over the other person.
What are the support factors which make it difficult for victims to leave?
I think there are a lot of support factors that affect women specifically of minority communities as well as the Asian and South Asian communities. When people have migrated across different countries, their access to family changes. There's a difference in the social support of who they would come to. Again, if they were to say anything ill about their husband, that'll be like they're not supporting their family. So again, there's that cultural conflict. Sometimes people are fearful about if they change anything within the family, if they decide to leave, that will change their ability to support themselves and or their children financially, so it changes their material supports. And a lot of times when coming to a new country, it's a lack of information about different formal systems of support that are available, both legally, professionally, to help with custody, to help with housing, to help with job changes, and so forth.
Are there other factors which make it difficult for victims to leave?
You know, some of the other factors are fear-based. There's the fear of if I decide to leave a relationship that's abusive, can I make it on my own? Can I provide an adequate life for me and my child or children? Can I be safe? Will the child be safe if we leave? Will I be able to do everything I need to support that child's future, whether it's monetary-wise, education-wise? You know, some survivors also struggle with concerns about negotiating different systems because of language barriers, maybe getting appropriate resources on legal services. And then there are a lot of other cultural barriers. Again, we don't typically talk about problems outside of our community, and typically not outside our family. So those are some of the other cultural factors and other fear factors that contribute to women staying in the relationship.
What are some of the characteristics of women who end up leaving their abusive relationships?
Characteristics of women who leave is that they seek out information, they seek out education, and they seek information and learn about organizations like My Sister's House that will help support them building life skills, job skills, helping them with language access if that's an issue, helping them learn about their legal rights as it pertains to property, as it pertains to custody, for some people if it pertains to immigration. And they're also learning about creating a safer place for themselves, accessing a supportive network in an organization like My Sister's House. Priya had talked about when she came to My Sister's House, she felt a lot of moral support. She also felt she wasn't judged. She felt she was accepted the way she was. And also helping her have confidence and being empowered to support her child the way she sees fit, and that she is enough with additional support as well.
If you suspect you or someone you know is a victim of financial abuse, ask yourself these questions. Does my partner withhold money from me and/or control my finances? Does my partner prevent me from having a job or steal money from me to keep me from being financially independent? Does my partner keep a strict account of all money I spend and/or earn? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may be a victim of financial abuse. To protect yourself, what should you do? With us now is Nilda Val-Morris, Executive Director of My Sister's House.
So Nilda, what should a woman do if her husband or partner financially abuses her?
Should a woman decide to leave her home, it's important that she talk to someone she trusts and create a physical and a financial safety plan. She can come in person or she can call My Sister's House helpline at 916-428-3271.
What if a woman doesn't speak English well?
My Sister's House specializes with women for whom English is not their first language. We have translators for over 10 Asian languages and dialects. All someone has to do is call our helpline at 916-428-3271 and say their language.
Then what happens?
Then, My Sister's House will find a trained person who speaks the same language to answer the questions the woman has regarding financial abuse and help her develop a financial and safety plan.
Can a victim come in person?
Coming in person is definitely better. They can talk to a trained person face-to-face, receive some emotional support, information, resources, and appropriate referrals.
So if someone comes in person, what can they expect?
My Sister's House staff is trained to start with what the person needs. Do they need to go over their finances? Or do they need to first develop a safety plan for when their husband comes home and has spent all the money on alcohol or on drugs?
Why is this issue of financial abuse even more critical for Asian Pacific Islander women?
Some Asian Pacific Islander women are brought over and not allowed to work or spend any money. They can't even buy a banana or toilet paper. The men may do this by not allowing the woman to drive or to learn English. Other Asian Pacific Islander women are brought over to work as servants, either domestic or as masseuse. They may be victims of human trafficking. Other women have a good job, but they know their partner is spending the family money gambling or on alcohol or drugs or on another girlfriend, and again, they have no say or no control.
So Nilda, what do you hope a woman suffering from abuse will do?
I hope she will be brave enough to call and end her misery for her financial, physical, and emotional safety. I hope she will be brave enough to call our crisis line at 916-428-3271 so she can get the help she needs for herself and for her children.
Thank you for joining us today on Healthy Relationships. We hope that this show has encouraged you to evaluate the relationships in your life. Remember, if you or a loved one is ever in need of help from financial abuse or any other form of abuse in a relationship, you can contact the multilingual 24-hour helpline at 916-428-3271.
Mark your calendars for the annual high tea on Saturday, October 23rd at the Chinese Community Church, and our Run for a Safe Haven, a walk to support domestic violence prevention. It's happening on Saturday morning, November 6th at William Land Park in Sacramento. For more information on My Sister's House, please visit our website at www.my-sisters-house.org.
We'd especially like to thank today's guests, Priya and Dr. Sharma. Also, we'd like to give a big thanks to the Office of Violence Against Women for making this episode possible, and to Crossings TV for the technical assistance.
That's all for today's episode of Healthy Relationships. On behalf of My Sister's House, thank you for watching.